Amy Klobuchar has done really well in the debates. She's been sharp, on point, capturing opportunities to express herself, not afraid to go after other candidates. Her poll numbers have been going up. She finished third in New Hampshire. So I didn't know that much about her except that she is a senator, gets a lot of bills passed. So apparently she is good at getting bipartisan support because the Senate is controlled by the Republicans. So let's take a look at her webpage, amyklobuchar.com, and find out more about this candidate. So first we get a little bit about her background but what policies are we going to see in this opening paragraph? Leading the fight to win a 48-hour hospital stay for new moms. So I agree with that. It used to be 5 days, and then it seemed to be getting shorter. New moms and their babies, that's good. We don't want to give mom 48 hours, but then boot the baby out after 24. So I think that's a positive thing. Landmark legislation to end human trafficking, combat the opioid epidemic, protect consumer rights, and strengthen our election security. Building a better future, passed more than 100 bills. I know she's known for that. Named the most effective Democratic senator. Candidate who can beat Donald Trump. Now, I know a lot of people really want to see that. Show me the policies. And if they're not good policies, then you're not going to get my vote. That's my take on it. As president, Amy will look people in the eye, tell them the truth, and govern with integrity. All right, so let's get to the issues. Healthcare, shared prosperity, and economic justice. Economic justice, what does that mean? I'm concerned hearing that term. I would much prefer seeing the term economic opportunity. That's a good thing. Everybody knows what it is. Giving everybody the chance for economic opportunity, be able to get a job, be able to advance in that job. But economic justice, let's find out a little bit more about that. So apparently we have these 5 major categories. Healthcare, a lot of people are concerned about. Climate change, a lot of people are concerned about. Safer world, strong democracy, shared prosperity, and economic justice. Basically, there are base things that everybody wants. Doesn't matter if you're a man, woman, transgender, gay, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever you want. Economic opportunity, you want safe neighborhoods, you want good schools. So there are things that everybody wants. So let's get a little bit more into this one, shared prosperity. So definitely it's fair to talk about the current disparity in wealth, something that Bernie Sanders brings up a lot. So she's for raising the minimum wage. Bernie Sanders, I'm guessing the $15 minimum wage. Bernie Sanders is for 2. Cut child poverty in half in a decade and end it in a generation with policies based on a report for the National Academy of Sciences. Well, that's interesting. So what are these detailed policies for cutting child poverty in half? Oh, a tweet. So no real policies as far as doing that. K-12 education, typical politician spiel, post-secondary education. Yeah, we really need to talk about technical certifications. Absolutely. Stop spending all this money on degrees that don't have any value in the marketplace and then wind up with all this debt and not being able to get a job. That definitely has to be addressed. So here we have economic justice. We must beat back decades of systemic racism and inequality. And I was afraid this was going to happen. I was afraid this is what we're going to see with economic justice. And this kind of pisses me off because this is being the constant drumbeat, the constant indoctrination about what a horrible racist country this is. We must beat back decades of systemic racism and inequality. Decades from what? Since the 80s? Since the 80s. That's the great racism and inequality. Let's talk about how much progress this country has made in race and equality. This country is less racist than it's ever been. It's got more equality than it's ever been before. But I have to say, the Democratic side, you're never going to hear about the progress. It's always this country's racist, this country's racist. I think a lot of people are getting sick of it, and it's a lie. It's not true. So that is not something that's going to get win any points with me. Amy believes this begins with early child care, fixing our education system. Okay, so let's hope that there's something behind this aside from throwing money at it. Nope, call for more federal dollars. Okay, throwing money does not fix education. For decades, we've seen politicians do this. Oh, $50 million, $100 million. The money's spent through government corruption, through government mismanagement. The money's wasted in the schools. The quality of education is still absolutely terrible. If you want to fix the education system, maybe we need a federal policy where a certain percentage of a state budget can be used for pensions, because what we're seeing is a lot of the budget for education or a whole lot of public services, so much of that has been being eaten by pensions that as far as new teachers, new schools, there's not a lot of money left. So I think there has to be pension reform. And personally, I'm not a big fan of public unions. I went to a Chicago public high school. The education was terrible. I think that the Chicago Teachers Union, there's a lot of corruption there. They're really not in it for kids' education. It's more about job security, getting paid based on tenure, and just milking the taxpayers as much as possible. FDR was not for public unions, because in public unions you have the government on both sides of the negotiating table. And we've certainly seen that, certainly in Illinois and in other states as well. So just throwing money at it, that's not going to win points with me. Disparity in wages, so talking about increasing the minimum wage. Retirement savings, this is about making sure that all companies provide at least 50 cents an hour for retirement, but pretty much every company matches 401k contributions, so not really know how valuable that is. Okay, labor, she's really big on she's really big on unions. So rolling back right to work laws so people don't even have a choice whether they want to join a union or not. I think there's some unions that are very good. If you look at it, electrician union, to make sure people have current certifications, to have conventions talking about the latest with electronics and best ways to do them, what to watch out for, safety enhancements, new regulations, and making sure that people are professional and have the knowledge they need to be the best electricians. I think those unions are great. I don't think public unions are great, and there's a lot of other unions that milk money off of the workers without providing them any benefits. I worked in manufacturing for 7 years, worked with a lot of people that came from unions. I was in a non-union shop, and they talked about how they got into trouble, lost their job, and the union didn't do anything for them. So I think a lot of the unions out there aren't beneficial to the worker. They just add another level of bureaucracy, another level of cost. But of course, politicians love them because they can promise money for certain people to get support, and that just feeds into corruption. Going on to immigration reform, DREAM Act, pathway to earn citizenship, stopping the cruel and inhumane policy. All right, are we talking about kids in cages? Of course, child separation, Trump administration. Actually, this also happened under Obama. And if you and plus, let's separate illegal immigration with legal immigration. And if you tell people involved with human trafficking that if you have children with you, you'll get to the front of line and you'll get special policies, then what's going to happen is you're going to see a bunch of kids exploited, and these human traffickers are always going to have kids with them. So you're going to encourage this kind of trafficking. So the zero tolerance policy basically says you're breaking the law, you get separated. If you're driving in your car and your kids are in your car and you're driving drunk and you get pulled over, you will be separated from your kids. And these kind of policies, you can say that they're cruel, but they do then don't incentivize human trafficking to make sure that they're using kids and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm the father," whether they're their father or not. But once again, I think the biggest thing is this did happen under Obama. You didn't seem to care when this was happening under Obama. Right there in the different responses coming in, and it's Congress that really needs to reform these policies. So do your job, fix these immigration laws. No Congress lack of action is a stain. Some picture just kids in cages were from the Obama administration. So let's just be honest about immigration, and let's talk about illegal immigration and legal immigration. Nobody's attacking legal immigration. Everybody knows we're a country of immigrants. We allow 1 million legal immigrants a year, but we have to have borders and we have to control that illegal immigration. Okay, talking about infrastructure, a changing economy, housing. So let's go into one of these other areas. Let's go ahead and touch on healthcare because this is an important subject for a lot of people. Universal healthcare options. So she's for keeping the private sector, not like Bernie, getting rid of the private sector. Everything's just a government option, but expanding that public option, changes to the Affordable Care Act to bring down costs on consumers. So I am somebody that something like 6 years ago, 7 years ago, lost my job, became an independent contractor where I then had Obamacare. And when it first came out, I go to this website, I have all these options, all these different companies. The price was affordable. It was actually a good thing when it first came out, but every year the prices just really went up and up and up and up. And in Illinois, and I now live in Missouri and now have working at a company where I have the company insurance. When I last left Illinois, the premiums it skyrocketed to $1,000, and this was for high deductible, and this was just for me and my wife. So that the cost just went up so much. It wasn't such a good thing. But if they can get those prices down, then it'll be more reasonable for people. So okay, let's get prescription drug prices under control. Reproductive rights have been under attack. We've seen certain states make it impossible for any clinic in that state to provide those services. Care for seniors. Let's go ahead and go to climate, see what she has to say. So here, talking about the problem, I think everybody understands the warming of the earth, and this is an issue. So let's talk about urgent priority. Co-sponsors of the Green New Deal, that's not going to win any points with me. The Green New Deal to me is a socialist, racist piece of garbage. It talks about repairing historical oppression. I mean, what does that even mean? And very little to do with anything that would actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I think the Green New Deal is a joke, and I plan on doing a video talking about that more. No money fossil fuel money pledge, so she doesn't get campaign contributions from the fossil fuel industry. Get us back into international climate change agreements, but how many countries are actually complying with these international climate change agreements? The last news I saw that the numbers weren't good. Clean power rules, gas mileage standards, sweeping legislation, clean energy jobs. Tougher building codes, more regulations, make it even more expensive to build. That's really not going to help our country. Carbon pricing systems that does not have a regressive impact on Americans. If you're going to have a carbon tax, if you're going to have a higher tax on things like gasoline, that is going to affect poor people. There's no way around it. Buy clean policies, 100% net zero emissions no later than 2050. No mention of nuclear energy, which tells me that this isn't serious. By the way, for people that don't know, I was a big fan of Andrew Yang, and unfortunately he's dropped out. I loved his policies. Thought they really addressed, if you want to bring people out of poverty, universal basic income, freedom dividend, and addressing climate change. He did say, I believe, the fact that nuclear power has to be part of this. This crazy war on nuclear power, you've seen where people have petitioned and prematurely shut down nuclear power plants. What happened? They wound up burning more fossil fuels. Just absolutely ridiculous. So let's talk about a strong democracy. Voter campaign finance. The right to vote is the bedrock of our democracy, and we must make sure people's voices are heard. But today, the right to vote is under attack. It is not under attack. I've seen this. I think this stuff has been pretty much debunked. When you look at it, like, for example, you see a lot of news about voter ID laws. Oh my gosh, they're requiring IDs, and minorities, they don't know where the DMV is. They don't have driver's license. That's so ridiculous. Minorities know where the DMV is. They have driver's license. When I see these white people treating minorities like they have some kind of handicap, it's like, it's so painful. Please stop. Please stop. Seriously. Voting rights, automatically registering 18-year-olds in the country to vote. Well, that's an interesting idea. Banning states from purging, that's something else that's been debunked. If somebody hasn't voted in the last 3 or 4 elections, you know what? You do want to purge them. Maybe they passed away. Maybe they moved to a different state. So occasionally you do need to purge and clean up those records. It doesn't mean you're trying to suppress anything. So this is kind of disappointing to see this kind of stuff. Criminal justice. Okay, well, that's something that did get passed under Trump that he's talking about. So this is the Second Step Act. So state and local facilities. Well, I mean, definitely there's some crazy stuff going on with the criminal system. When you see people getting 10 years in prison for marijuana, but 3 years for murder, you know, you got crazy stuff going on. During his State of the Union, Donald Trump talked about how he eliminated the sentence for a black woman who had this crazy, nonviolent life year or 30-year sentence. Yeah, absolutely. We need to stop with this stuff. So definitely we need some reform. And even with the reform we've had, I'm sure there's more reform that needs to be done. All right, let's go to a safer world. Foreign policy, deserve better than foreign policy by treat. That is absolutely a 100 legitimate, deserved attack on Donald Trump. I mean, we shouldn't be seeing foreign policy by tweets, especially before our military generals and people are even aware, and they're learning about it by seeing a tweet. That's definitely been kind of reckless. All right, guns, banning bump stocks. I thought bump stocks were already banned. If they were, then you're talking about doing something that was already done. High capacity ammunition, assault weapons, banning those, taking care of our veterans, combating hate and domestic terrorism. Direct Department of Homeland Security resume its work tracking right-wing extremism. Okay, just right-wing. What about left-wing extremism? What about assaults by members of Antifa? What about these people in New York attacking New York police officers? So that's kind of annoys me just to say right-wing extremism. Why not just say extremism, including white nationalism? Make lynching a federal crime, because in the year 2020, we really have to be concerned about lynching and how current forms of communication are being used to spread hate and recommend ways of combat threats. I'm very leery of so-called hate laws because I've seen them used in the UK, in Europe, where certain speech then gets banned and you give politicians the power to ban speech. And it gets completely insane to where if you say biological science, somebody can either be male or female. Oh my gosh, you're transphobe. That's hate speech. If you say people born biologically as men shouldn't be competing with biological women in competitive sports that involve strength or maybe MMA, then oh my gosh, that's hate speech. So you see some crazy stuff. And, crime is crime. If it's burglary, if it's assault, if it's murder. So we already have laws against this stuff. So do we need to really have this other set of laws with that? And then is it going to be applied fairly? What if a group of minorities attack somebody who's white for being white? Is that going to be considered a hate crime, or does it just go one direction? And I think this is once again trying to portray the United States as this horrible racist country. I've talked to people that have come here from other countries, and they're like, "Man, people think that this country's racist. They should come where I came from. They have no idea what racism is." And living in this country in 2020, you didn't experience this country in 1963. Obviously, there's people alive that did experience that, but they're up there. I'm in my 50s. I grew up in Chicago. I never experienced segregation. So this constant drumbeat about how horrible this country is, I think it's getting old. It's not true. We've made a tremendous amount of progress. So stop talking about policies for this horrible situation that, quite frankly, doesn't exist. That's not to say it doesn't exist at all, but let's look at statistics and let's use perspective. So that's pretty much it. Based on this, I'm pretty disappointed, and I am missing Andrew Yang because I thought his policies were great. What is the best way to address poverty, to get everybody above the poverty line? Universal basic income. What's the best way to get the power of politics back into the hands of the people, away from the corporations and the lobbyists? Democracy dollars. Once again, tackling climate change with including nuclear power is part of that puzzle. And just looking at Amy's policies, a lot of them are just meaningless, generic statements, no policies, a lot of fluff, and then this economic justice rather than let's talk about economic opportunity. So based on this, she's not going to be getting my vote, and that's my take on it. This is Jim Wall. Thanks for watching. Until next time.
Cisco, do we have to leave all our good friends now?
Only until next time, Pancho. Adios, amigos.